Hear ye, hear ye. I am back from my trip, and it means that it's time to go out there and talk about the latest in NHL Rumours. Because we had ourselves a video segment done on TSN Insider Trading. This was from earlier this afternoon, and in it we had ourselves word from Pierre LeBrun that adds a huge dent into the current state of the trade market. LeBrun on Insider Trading reports that Patrik Laine would like to move on from Columbus, and both the team and agent will work together to try to get a trade done. He wants a fresh start. So there you go, it's official. Patrik Laine wants out, and this isn't really something that I think is all too surprising. It's just nice to hear, I guess, from one of the renowned NHL insiders that, yeah, it's official, the request has been made, the desire is legit. Patrik Laine seems like he'll be on his way out. Now, as we had talked about, this previous season, Patrik Laine didn't have a great year, but it wasn't because he sucked. He only played 18 games, he was hurt, he was in the NHL's Player Assistance Program. The prior 2 years, though, he was really good. Strong point-per-game player with Columbus, but a guy who hasn't really had the opportunity to showcase that 40-goal potential that he had exhibited back when he was a Winnipeg Jet. Everybody had this idea in their minds of what Laine was supposed to be back in 2016, 2017, 2018, but ever since going through the dark days in Winnipeg, eventually getting traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois and making Columbus his new home, Patrik Laine hasn't really been able to get that goal-scoring touch back, although he has improved his game point production-wise in other areas. This previous season was unfortunate as it was, and as a result, Patrik Laine is in a tough spot, and you can very well understand why it is that he would want a change of scenery. Now, when it comes to the Blue Jackets, apparently they also want to move on from Laine too, and that makes sense. Patrik Laine is making $8.7 million a year till the end of 2026, and that is a pretty steep cap hit for a guy who, even if he spends the majority of the year on the LTIR or in the NHL's Players Assistance Program so the cap doesn't count, you could understand why the Blue Jackets would want to use that money elsewhere. And if they do find themselves a trade with Patrik Laine, because that contract is so big, they may have to end up retaining on whatever deal gets done in order for it to go through. But still, Patrik Laine, the profile, the player that he is, there's a lot of potential here, and if you're able to really unlock all that lies dormant within Patrik Laine's game, honestly, you could be looking at a 30-goal, 70, 80-point guy every season. If he gets back to 40-goal form, then that would be even better. We all recognize that the guy is crazy talented, but it just hasn't really been the proper breeding ground the past few seasons for him to exhibit those skills and get the points that he can get. So whatever team goes out there and gets him, they're going to have to be a little bit patient. They're going to have to allow him to adjust and allow him to get back to speed, too. I mean, Laine hasn't played an NHL game since December, so it's been half a calendar year of him just being on the IR and the Players Assistance Program, so we'll take a look at where he's able to go as his career goes on. And with this idea in mind now that Laine does want out, we've had a bunch of teams and a bunch of fan bases go out there and asking themselves, hey, is this the guy that we should be targeting in the offseason? Is Patrik Laine an addition to the Vancouver Canucks or the Montreal Canadiens or whichever other team people are talking about that could be interesting here? And of course, because I'm a Canucks and a Canadiens fan, I wanted to just bring that up here for the fan base right now. But honestly, we can talk about that a little bit later. We can also debate whether or not the teams that are going after Laine are going to be quote-unquote competitive teams. I could understand why a team would want to go out there and do it, but of course we could also understand the perspective that says no, we wouldn't. Patrik Laine, as good as he is and as talented as he can be, unfortunately has had a few ups and downs the past year or so that really make it difficult to guarantee success. So if you are a team that is already in the playoffs and doing well and you're projected to being a playoff contender and a Stanley Cup favorite next year or whatever, it doesn't really seem like the most guaranteed idea to go after a Patrik Laine. When you're in this competitive window, you cannot afford to make mistakes with your dollars. And if Patrik Laine, as unfortunate as it may be, if he goes out there and doesn't improve next season, if he has a pretty bad year, he's half a point a game, he doesn't play a lot, maybe he's injured, if you end up going through that version of Patrik Laine once more, then ultimately it would have been a really bad gamble. But, of course, the opposing side is true, too. Hey, if Patrik Laine pops off, he gets 30 goals and 80 points, then okay, you're laughing, especially if you get him at salary retained. This might make it easier for teams that are at the bottom of the league or near that tweener kind of position in the lineup to go for a Patrik Laine and commit that money to him, because if a team is just on the outside looking in, then you take any help that you can get. And if it works out, it could be fantastic. If it doesn't, okay, well, you weren't supposed to be a contending team anyway, so a team like Montreal, for example, can afford to make that mistake. There also are other teams and organizations that you could say, oh yeah, well, we're really good at developing young guys. Marty St. Louis is like the top young guy revival coach, so maybe he can fix, quote-unquote, the profile that Patrik Laine has. Or maybe it's a team that has a really bad chance at making the playoffs like Chicago or San Jose. They go out there and say, hey, we want a guy that can play with our #1 franchise center. Let's get Patrik Laine to play with Connor Bedard. Let's get Patrik Laine to get passes from William Eklund and Macklin Celebrini. Laine is not too old, I'd say. I mean, he's only 26. He just turned 26 at the beginning of April, so there still is a lot of time for him to grow and get better. 26, though, is young enough where if you wanted to capitalize on the profile that he's got, whilst building for the future with some of your other guys, it fits for sure, in my opinion. Austin Matthews is still considered young, and they were in the same draft class, so there's your point of reference right there. But I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you're a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, what are your opinions on the idea of Patrik Laine officially wanting out, and both sides, the team and the player and the agent and everybody else involved, being okay with the change of scenery here? What are your opinions on how much you would want in a return for Patrik Laine? What's the minimum that you would be okay with accepting? Because I get it, you know, Patrik Laine is a good, talented asset. He's not going to go for nothing, but you got to acknowledge the factors here. He had a bad year. It was a slow one. He's making a lot of money, so if there's salary retained, that makes it a lot easier for you to trade him, but it holds you back a little bit when it comes to your monetary advances. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're a Blue Jackets fan, what are your opinions about the idea of a Laine trade? What do you think that looks like in a perfect world? And if you're a fan of any other team, what are your thoughts on Patrik Laine potentially being an acquisition of yours? If you're a fan of the Sharks or the Blackhawks, a team at the bottom of the standings, if you're a fan of Montreal, what are your opinions about Patrik Laine potentially being on the move? Would you want to see Kent Hughes go out there and try his hand at this player rather than a Marty Necas, for example? And of course, if you're a fan of any other team, what are your opinions about Laine being on the trade block, and what's the max you'd be willing to give up to get him in a trade? Risk versus reward as well, you have to think about, because Laine, of course, is not guaranteed to being good again. But with all that in mind, the comment section is your floor. What are your thoughts on the idea of a Patrik Laine trade? Link to the video where Pierre LeBrun goes out there and talks about this. It will be in the description if you want to see that yourself. But for now, thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.